Can crypto architect a regulatory ceasefire with incentive payments to government treasuries? Block rewards paid to network validators were one of the primary innovations that enabled Bitcoin to succeed where prior cryptographic payment systems like digital gold had failed. If economic incentives, guaranteed by an immutable, game-theoretic set of rules, is what worked to bootstrap global cooperation among Bitcoin miners, might it be able to do the same for governments and regulators? There are many reasons why cryptocurrency, blockchain, and Web3 represent dramatic potential for innovation and improvement for society. Prominent among them are the ability for anyone to transact cheaply, instantly, and permissionlessly on a public network that has known open source rules of engagement. Also, the ability to have such transactions secured by cryptography and game theory rather than any single point of failure company or institution. Also, the ability to enhance the liquidity, access, and value of real-world assets through tokenization, to couple them to NFTs on digital rails that improve property rights for homeowners, artists, and collectors. Perhaps my favorite, the ability to coordinate massively global crowdsourced efforts using cryptoeconomic incentives. And lastly, the ability to build logic and composability of all of these functions using programmable smart contracts. Now, there are also many reasons why these new technologies represent threats to people, threats to users and investors, whom regulators are obligated to protect as best they can. The space has so many new paradigms and is evolving so rapidly that regulators are rushing to catch up, simply to reduce the number of unknowns, let alone integrate the space into the already staggering complexity of existing financial regulations. Also, these emerging technologies are still being built, and as a result, the value of the tokens that they use to power their mini internal economies can be very volatile. Some users, investors can, and have, gained and lost substantial sums of money. Now, whether protection from such loss is a matter of personal responsibility or regulatory responsibility is a philosophical question beyond the scope of this article. Also, because of a lack of regulatory clarity and enforcement, setting up schemes and hacks that extract value from other users is relatively easier for bad actors in this space than the traditional financial system. And because of innovative privacy-preserving techniques on some systems, the movement of funds and money laundering is also relatively easier for bad actors in this space than the traditional system. It's my personal perspective that the value and potential upside outweighs the downside, but I'll leave that aside for now. To my point, what if Web3 were to further expand the boundaries of its system design to include regulators, to include the existing financial system and world governments as participants, stakeholders, and partners to integrate rather than opponents to defend against or to attack? My proposal is this. Collect a portion of the transaction fees from your cryptocurrency into a treasury that can be claimed by a government at any time, if they opt into a specific smart contract that governs that treasury. This will do two things simultaneously. It will make them participants in your internal economy and tacitly create their endorsement of its existence and operation. One might accuse this strategy of being blunt, audacious, or utilitarian. But once there's an economic incentive for both points of view to cooperate, I think many will be surprised how tractable all of the previously stated fears and issues suddenly become. Now, there would clearly be a lot of technical, legal, financial, and social hurdles to overcome to make this happen, and maybe it would ultimately prove unviable. But maybe this is an idea that resonates with some of the thousands of blockchain projects out there as a worthwhile experiment. Maybe in the global engines of innovation and free market, there are enough shots on goal that a winning implementation emerges. Getting down to brass tacks, there are many possible ways that this might be implemented. And I'd love to hear other folks' ideas as well as critiques. I'm proposing one way, and I'll link to a more detailed written explanation in the comments, but let me go through a few of the highlights. How do we know which country gets the fee? Each transaction would pay the treasury fee to a separate country address in the treasury for the state or country in which that transaction occurred. If the sender and receiver are in different locations, the treasury fee would be split 50-50 between those locations. How do we know the sender's locations? This is a large technical hurdle that would require careful design. First, there would need to be some new computational or gas cost to perform this calculation or proof of location. Second, the method would need to be robust to spoofing, for example, by running a VPN and claiming to be in one country and not another. There are researchers and protocols working on this problem already. For example, requiring transactions to ping one or more trusted anchor servers that publicly announce their location, and trading cryptographic signatures so that the signer's location can be triangulated using the speed of light. What about the value of privacy and anonymity? Ideally, a market-based solution could be developed that still allows users to opt in to an anonymous transaction by paying an additional premium. And it's only the users who opt out and therefore opt for a proof of location or KYC process, those are the ones who are funding the government treasuries. So the governments are incentivized to make this as friendly and light touch as possible, since there's a market choice between the two. How is the treasury claimed then by a government? Each government would need to become users of the chain to interact with the treasury smart contract and access their share of the funds. The list could be something as simple as a global registry of countries, but this is not ideal, since this would require some sort of administrative process and trusted intermediaries. Ideally, some game theoretic mechanism could be developed where government is verified by approvals or signatures of some group of validators or users with nearby locations, or possibly some sort of challenge system where governments can collect their funds only after a period of locational or other challenges that are conducted by validators, users, or even a consensus of other governments. Let me be clear, the goal should be to retain the same openness and accessibility so that the blockchain remains a true public good. This may mean that the cheap, instant, and trustable transactions would not be accessible only to your favorite groups of people, but to everyone. In my example of a modified Ethereum, total annual fees are increased from $2.1 billion to $3.2 billion. These incremental amounts are fees to cover the cost of proof of location, as well as the premium fees for anonymous transactions. When it's all said and done, the hypothetical new protocol would burn $0.9 billion from anonymous transactions and deposit $1.35 billion into country treasuries worldwide. In addition to the simple attractiveness of extra government revenue, think about the potential efficiency gains to tax collection. It costs the IRS in the United States $13 billion to collect $4.1 trillion. Moreover, $1 trillion of taxes is estimated to be lost due to tax dodging and inefficient auditing and collection. Programmatic solutions like those contemplated here could both decrease the cost and increase the realization of government revenues. And in a way, this whole solution is akin to growth marketing. If you pay incentives to welcome government users onto your blockchain, they may want to become more active customers and onboard the collection of other taxes, or completely new orthogonal use cases. It would be critical, however, to have protections against manipulations that would target the core protocol. Perhaps there are ways to ensure game theoretic equilibrium with respect to governments that would be interacting with the protocol. But you may be asking, what about decentralization? Wasn't the whole point to leave government out of Web3? I hear you, and I understand. Maybe that is ultimately the better solution, but might it be better to put more focus on the clearest and most beneficial use cases first, so we can get them across the finish line to the most people? It can seem attractive to wholesale reinvent the entire system, but I suspect it's more complicated than that. And the reinvention of each component in that system is going to have its own level of feasibility and return on investment. Ultimately, governments will be a part of the Web3 ecosystem, whether it's reinvented from within, integrated from without, or a combination of the two. So thanks for listening. I think the above is worth considering. Please let me know what your thoughts, ideas, or critiques are.